How you doing?
I'm really good, Marty. Good to see you and good to talk to you.
You too, and congratulations on your big award there. That's pretty cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah, stoked.
Not bad for the first album, huh?
Yeah, yeah. I finally got around to doing my own thing. Been involved in a lot of other bits and bobs, as you well know, and I've
Yeah,
seen you around the traps many times,
yeah. No,
doing those different things. But this is my first as band leader, so yeah, pretty happy with. Well, obviously happy, but over the moon actually. Yeah, it's been a great couple of days, just sort of enjoying.
as well
You
you
know,
should.
yeah, enjoying it all.
Excellent. Why is it taking you so long to get around to this part of your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I guess I've always been busy, just doing a lot of different types of work, from playing pop covers in bands and that, just to sort of make ends meet, and right through to lately in the last few years being involved in bigger projects that are really fantastic and exciting projects to be involved in, but very long arc, very long, lots of work. You
Yeah,
might
yeah,
work 3 or 6 or 9 months on something, so it just ends up being very, I just end up being very busy.
yeah. Well, that's a good
So
thing
that's
to be.
exactly, yeah, can't complain, and in fact I'd love it to go back to being as busy as it was.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my follow-up question. How do you see the scenario coming out of this COVID thing? Is it going to be a while before it gets back to normal?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had pretty much every musician or a music teacher or a music associated person, or even just in the wider hospitality industry and event managers and agents, etc., and production companies, etc. I've had lots of different conversations on the different things that I do, and depending on who you talk to, everyone's got a slightly different outlook. It's mostly positive because we are where we are. I think
Yeah,
we've just not to get too political, but I personally believe this expediency with which we've gotten through it and gotten to this point where we are is really due to a quick actions on our government's behalf,
yep,
and because of that, we'll be looking at a faster recovery. I mean, that's the short of it, but the slightly longer of it is that I mean, I've got an agency with a whole bunch of artists, and we've taken one booking recently because it's restarted and that, but it just sort of everything just walked off a cliff, and that's
yep,
the same for all my performance work, and I'm just lucky I do teaching and I've got
yeah,
a few different things I do, so I'm quite lucky in that sense. But for most of us, it's been diabolical. So it's
yeah.
lovely to have a compassionate. You know all this anyway, but it's lovely to have a compassionate government that's helped us out and put their money, or put their money in our pockets, or their money where their mouth is, and
It
actually
was
helped
our
us.
money to begin with.
Yeah, yeah, right. It's come back to me. My money's come back to me. I remember spending this $20. It's come back. No, so yeah. I mean, it's a big conversation, and it's really,
Yeah,
but it is as it still is, as it has been for the last few months, couple of months. It's just wait and see,
yeah,
but largely much more positive than most other places on the planet. So feel very
definitely.
fortunate.
Yeah, yeah. I did a bunch of interviews with some American musicians last week like this, and there's a very different story. It's
Different
like
tone, I can imagine. Oh man, I would have loved to be in a fly on the wall on those. I mean, you're probably putting them up on the
they are
verge.
up there ready to go. Yep. So
Right.
yeah, but it's
But
pretty
but
intense.
it, yeah, yeah.
Like one guy he's like maybe your age, living in Chicago. He's kind of a Bruce Springsteen singer-songwriter guy. So he had his opinion. Then I talked to a 70-year-old blues man from New York City, and he just poured his heart out. It was just whoa. And then kind of a indie rock noise rocker from L.A. So I had L.A., Chicago, New York, but yeah, they all had stories to tell.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I've got friends and family. I mean, gosh, I'm sure, of course, you have over there, and it's it's uh, it's pretty diabolical. I
Yep.
haven't. It does depend a little bit where you are. I've had different people in different states
Yep.
say wildly different stories, and both sides of all sides of the political spectrum as well. So it really depends on who you talk to. But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, regardless of that, no one's in an incredibly joyous state of excitement about what's happening,
No.
or even seeing a way out. So I really feel for anyone over there. Yeah, gosh.
We should talk about the album a little bit. I
Yeah,
realize it
good.
was released last year, but now everybody's talking about it now. I mean, getting an award like this has got to do great things for the visibility and awareness of the record. I mean, I realize it's a jazz record. Nobody's getting rich off of this thing, but it's something that you obviously feel passionate about that you needed to do at some point. So tell me about that passion.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've always since I was young, I've always been interested in jazz, more so in the harmony, just the beauty of chords and how chords fit together, and build their way into the emotional content of a song. So of course, when I was a kid, it was all pop music that I was listening to, and my parents were listening to. Although they did have some fantastic, they listened to Stevie Wonder and all that kind of soul music, and a lot of blues music as well. So I was kind of lucky to have that and be absorbed in that type of music. But anyway, I fell in love even with pop music that had interesting harmony attached to it. I was always really carried away with that. So that's kind of been the principal excitement for me, around one, eventually coming to write my own music, but two, always just like, that's the stuff that I like to listen to. It also makes me quite, passionately interested in theory as well, because, the more you get into that stuff, it can get pretty sophisticated and complex and gnarly quickly. So that's the other side of things, as well as I love teaching, and I love analyzing and just getting stuck into things and ripping them apart and seeing how things work, whether that's pop music or kind of wherever that's it doesn't matter. I'm just a really huge passionate fan of harmony and of music that has usually kind of those sophisticated elements, harmonic elements, and lately, and maybe in the last 10 years, I've been really getting into rhythmic stuff as well. So that very long kind of arc has finally led me to do a master's, and the master's was in composition, and essentially dealt with presenting complex elements to the musicians and eventually to the audience, to the listener, but also affecting some more simplistic aesthetics, in order that there would be a nice kind of sweet spot reached between the crazy stuff or the challenging stuff for the musicians, the exciting stuff, but also an element of listenability. So that was really what the master's writing was about, the thesis, but also the music was, I really didn't want it to be academic. It didn't or sound academic. Academic at the end.
I'm curious, because you got guys like Kevin Field and Ollie and Roger Mannon's playing on this thing. But obviously, you compose these things ahead of time. You have to present them to them in some form or fashion, and then they kind of take off on their own. What kind of conversations do you have with your musician friends when you're making a record like this?
It's such a big part of it. I wrote for them. I wrote thinking about them. I wrote thinking about each instrument and thinking about each human being, who through many years of playing together, I kind of had known what they might bring to the table. But also, I have got a great respect for, one, their opinions and their taste, but also their colossal musicianship that they bring. So I knew that whatever I put in front of them, they would perhaps, have a bit of a giggle and then just go off and do their own thing with it, which did happen in a couple of cases. But being honest about it, I was actually... I'd spent so long on this, because of course it took me a year to get everything together, and I was working very intensely on the music. I was practicing for many months, sometimes just one song for like a month, just trying to get inside it, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And so I became really stuck in what I expected to hear, because I'd been listening to some backing tracks I'd created or whatever. I painted these pictures, these sonic pictures. I was like, well, that's what it should sound like. And of course I get to the rehearsal and give them guys these scores, and then they're just like, yeah, no, that's no good. Let's just do this. And it instantly sounds amazing. And so apart from writing with them in mind, I was actually also writing with the idea that, there's got to be space in here for them to embrace it and make their own. It can't be just everything written out. And I don't just mean the improvising sections go for God. I mean, everything is like, if that melody doesn't work, if those chords suck, let's just do something else. Or that rhythm I've written or whatever.
Yeah. But I'm guessing that the nature of the music is such that when you actually got in there and started rolling tape or whatever it is you're rolling these days, that it went fairly quickly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had 2 rehearsals. I mean, it's quite tricky music, and I only realised that when I was talking to the drummer, and I had sort of had planned a bunch of stuff, and then one of them I just thought, oh, that doesn't work, and then I ended up writing 2 more and just presented them on the day of the recording. It's like, oh, I'm going to change that,
Yeah.
and and of course, just before counting it in, no one's seen this, and I'm like, oh, it's really easy, you'll be fine. And then we play it, and there's this kind of train wreck while while John Kim's running the recording. And then I'm like, oh yeah, maybe it's not that easy. Actually, yeah, there's this really tricky thing here, and then so. But no, you're right. Generally speaking, I mean, these guys are such incredible musicians. It just was very fast.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Very fast to leap off the page and get to the music.
Yeah.
Get to like, oh, cool. Well, let's have fun with this, or what can we do with this? How can we push this?
So I imagine with the new kind of interest in the record and a little publicity here and there, that you're probably itching to get and play some of this stuff live. Is that going to happen anytime soon, do you think?
Yeah, well, I did the release in October, and then I got very, very busy. One of the gigs I do is a big Christmas show, and then that was just like I was gone for a couple of months. And then we came back, moved house, and then COVID hit, and that was it. That's all that's happened. So I definitely had planned to do some. I was a bit late to catch the Easter-ish festivals, so I just thought, oh well, that's cool. I'll pick it up kind of April. I'll get into it. And then, of course, that came along and went, and now it's just like, okay, well, what's actually still around? So there is going to be the Wellington Jazz Festival. I'm looking at doing something down there, separate from this, actually, just more composition thing that they're running a commission for, but and putting a group together to do some stuff, and I will do my music there. Last year, I toured I played with Holly Smith and a bunch of great musicians, and we did Southern Jam. We were the judges. We did a whole bunch of gigs down there, and we ran a few tunes out then. And then subsequently, I played a lot with Matt Fields, a great bass player, expat Kiwi, who's come back from New York, and we did a bunch of stuff. And again, I tried some different configurations, tried my music, and so that was great to do a lot of playing of it. In fact, the thing that happens, you probably know this story, is you go, cool, I've written this music, you get into the studio, you record it, then it sits for a little while, you take it out, you go and gig it. Maybe you're lucky enough to get a tour, a bunch of dates. And then after about 6 months, you're like, right, now we're really ready to play it. Oh, we've already done the album.
Here you go.
yeah, exactly. So hopefully, yeah, man, I really do hope I can get some more opportunities. There's only really a couple of things at the moment I've got my eye on. So yeah, we'll see if, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Now, the record came out on Rattle Records, which is the jazz label that Steve Garden has put together and has been running for years. I'm just curious as to, with that in mind, kind of how do you see the jazz scene in New Zealand these days? Is it vibrant? Is it struggling? What's the story?
Yeah, I mean, I think we started off with the joke of like, the very true joke of we've got it's a jazz album. And jazz albums you don't really retire off them,
No.
In little old New Zealand, you don't run a couple of hundred out and then live off the streaming income or anything, per se. But so I guess part of the answer to the question is, is it a struggling industry? Well, the vibrancy of the artists is incredible. Like, artist-wise, it's very vibrant. What is happening in the compositional world and how we're our own little interesting melting pot of what we hear from overseas and then what the communities that have grown up in the last 20 years or so, 30 years or longer, and around jazz, around some of the institutes, but also just around certain groups of people that hold the music in real high esteem and really put, have a great quality output. Lots and lots of people in lots of different places in New Zealand. This has grown the scene, and I feel it's incredibly vibrant. There's so much music happening out there and so much output. Like, even to get nominated in the top 3 was an incredible achievement for myself, Alchemy, and Mikhail, Mark Case's project Alchemy, and Mikhail's album Resonate, because there's just so much good music put out nowadays, like every year. So that's the long answer about vibrancy. But yeah, it's just tricky to do much with it that is completely without just saturating the market. Or, I mean, how many gigs can you do really just
Yep.
doing this music? It's tricky.
And I guess it's always been that way. So it's always going to be that way, isn't it?
It has been that way for a long time since it became not popular music. I mean, at
Right.
one point in
Yeah.
time, of course, it was actually popular music. But yeah, certainly in my time, and for many decades before, it's a struggle to do only that. I really respect any musicians that say, oh, "Cool, this is what I want to do. I'm only going to play jazz or quite creative music or art music or improvised music or even classical music, and I'm only going to do that." And the reality of that is you go out and you do other stuff as well, as much as you can. Teaching or playing pop music or
Yep. Yep.
whatever. So and then you just feed that as much as you possibly can with your whatever's left over at the end of the day, energy wise, or the end of the week or whatever. So yeah, it's a funny. It's not dichotomy. What's the word? It's just a funny balancing act. Sorry.
Yeah. So have you got another record in you? Thinking about it yet?
Oh man, I'm writing all the time. In fact, one thing that happens I mean, I've never had this before, so I'm just assuming this is what people feel like, is you get these accolades that have come in and really lovely message. Last couple of days, I found out yesterday morning, the last 24 hours has been off the chain, and lots of messages and people calling and sending, bits and bobs, and like, this is really lovely talking to you about it. And, but it actually makes you think, or has made me think, man, it's okay. It's okay to do this, because sometimes you think, what am I doing?
Yeah.
This is just so much work. And I spent a bunch on the study, I spent a bunch on the album, heaps of time, saw my family for less time. And sometimes you just think, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And actually, that it's really lovely to have that recognition, because then you go, man, it's okay. It's okay to do this. It's okay because people believe in what I do, and that's just mind blowing. How amazing is that?
Yeah. No, that's good. Well, congratulations again. I was so happy to see that you won the thing. So
Thanks, Marty. I appreciate that, man. I really do.
No, it's very good. And hopefully we'll get to see you out and about soon, along with everybody else and their mother. Because it's going to be a lot of local music for a while, so we might as well revel in it.
Absolutely right. The domestic scene should be pumping. So yeah, fingers crossed we catch up again soon, mate.
Yep. All righty.